Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Rasmussen of the Leopold Center here at Iowa State, and it's my pleasant task tonight to do introductions. Before I get to our speaker for the night, I would like to acknowledge the Shivers Memorial Lecture Series. This series was established in 1969 by Vera Shivers in honor of her husband, John. John and Vera were longtime prominent farmers in the Knoxville area and practitioners of sustainable agriculture. The lecture series has continued under the guidance of their daughters, Charlotte, Martha, and Marietta. And Charlotte and Martha and other members of the family are here tonight, including the next generation. So I'd like to invite them to stand for a moment so we could acknowledge their generosity to Iowa State and sustainable agriculture. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hans Herren. Since 2005, Dr. Herren has been president of the Millennium Institute in Washington, D.C., an organization dedicated to sustainable development work around the world. He's an entomologist by training, having received an MS in agronomy and a PhD from the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, and he also postdoc for a time at the University of California, Berkeley. He has worked a substantial part of his career in various areas of biological pest management, as well as his development work. He spent many years working in Africa, including service as Director General of the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology in Nairobi, Kenya. He's received many awards for his work. He's a recipient of the World Food Prize in 1995. He was elected to the National Academy of Sciences here in the United States in 1999, and he was awarded the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement in 2003. So it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Dr. Herren in his talk, Changing Course in Global Agriculture. Dr. Herren.
Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends in agriculture and maybe the food system. I'm very grateful to the Shiver family to organize this series of lectures and to have been invited here to Ames for for tonight's lecture. I've chosen the title Changing Course in Global Agriculture because it is clear that we need to do something about the present situation. And actually that was clear for many people way back. I guess sorry for the Shiver family who decided to move towards sustainable agriculture. And I think many people, many farmers actually know that maybe what they do today is not exactly what they should be doing. But again, there's a whole environment which they have to deal with, economic, social also in particular, and or mostly these two, which forces them sometimes to do things which maybe they would do different if they had a chance. So what are we going to be talking about tonight? So we'll talk about I'm basing the talk on the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology, or we call it the ISTAD report. And a few words more about this. And so looking at what is really the problem out there, what are the solutions, and can we actually do the change we're talking about? Is it possible? And we'll show you, we'll talk about this. Now, about this report, the ISTD report, so you can see it's many reports since, and this is the synthesis report is a summary of about 80 pages, which you can find online. And whoever has not seen it or read it, I suggest that you go to agassessmentinoneword.org and you can download it. It basically summarizes 2,000 pages of the work of 400 scientists from around the world. And there were people from all different disciplines, not only just the agronomy, or plant breeding, but we had a lot of social scientists in there, people from the animal sector, forestry, fish, basically what we understand under agriculture internationally, basically everything which sort of supports food, fiber, and feed production. So it's important to understand, it goes beyond just basically the crop. What happened actually since this report was published in 2008, many other reports came out, and there's so many, I've gone very fast. They diluted the message of the original report. And that report was endorsed by 59 countries from around the world. Unfortunately, this country, the UK and Australia, decided to stay away from it because we happen to be critical on two areas, trade, and you know how this country stands for free trade, but we were asking what free trade, and on biotechnology, because again, some countries, and the one I mentioned, I think, except the UK, where they cannot because they're part of the EU, grow GMOs, at least for now, we're very much, I think, pained to see that we were doubting, the silver bullet impact, which was always said would happen with GMOs. And I think that we are now already 5 years past this report, and I think everything you can see out there in terms of what this does to production, cost of production, we were right, even health, that there needs to be a whole lot more research, if anything, before they can be put out in the field. And we somehow knew that it will take a long, long time to cover the ground in terms of research to demonstrate that these things are safe for people, safe for animals, also and for the environment, and that by then, hopefully, other forms of agriculture would have taken over. But as you know, things are quite different. So what were we looking at in this report? So we looked at the four main areas: hunger and poverty, which is the old story. It goes on forever. It's not finished yet. We still have 860 or so million hungry people. The whole issue of rural and urban livelihoods, the whole migration issue from rural to urban, and the problem people create in the urban zones. And so the question is, how could we maybe not just stay put with this, but reverse the trend? If you look at the statistics, people will come to you and say, don't worry, by 2050, will be 80% or more people will live in cities. And my answer to this is, 2050 is a long way down the road, so do we want to let this happen, or are we going to do something about it? This is the question. We don't just sit there on our hands and let something happen if we decide we don't want it to happen. If we as a society decide that's the best, well, we do that in a true democracy, well, then that be it. But, who decides these things, I think is the question. Issues of nutrition and human health. We have major problems out there, as you know, not only on the nutrition, but the nutrition impact on health of too much or too little food. And again, that's not resolved by a long shot. Actually, it's getting worse rather than better. And then we have to look at, again, so how can we provide an environment for development which fits the environment, society, and the economy? Because right now we have done what? We are always looking at the economy. It's all about the economy. And sure, it's important. But we cannot only just put everything in the economy, and we have to start to look at the other dimensions of sustainable development, which again are the environment, society, economy. And actually, if these three elements are working together, if we pay attention to these three, we also have peace and security. If you look around the world, a lot of the problems actually come from not paying attention at the interplay of the three other dimensions of development. So what did we say? So business as usual is not an option. So why is it not an option? I think you probably heard that this expression has been taken over by many. Even the people we think don't do any good out there, big corporations. But for them too, they say they changed their business. Well, I'm yet to see what exactly they changed. But they think that bringing more efficiency is enough of a change. Certainly not. So if you look at the first element, socioeconomic problems, so the human health, consumption patterns, which are almost everywhere in the world going in the wrong direction. And it's sort of the model of the fast food, junk food model, which is being picked up in many, many places around the world. You can go to developing countries, Africa, you can go to Asia. This sort of globalization of the fast food issue. And again, fast food may not have to be as bad, but still, I think the way it's done, certainly no good. And also the consumption pattern itself. You know, what do we actually eat? Not only in terms of calorie, but what are these calories made up from? Jobs on farm. I mean, what's the biggest problem in this country? Well, we've seen the headlines yesterday. Oh, again, less job creation. I wonder, and they never say this, if you had a little table next, you know, how many jobs were lost again in agriculture and the food system? Or how many were created there? Are we doing something hard to actually see, can we get more people back into agriculture and replace some of the oil which we have been replacing people with? So I think we need to look at this. But again, if the jobs on farm are bad jobs, not paid well, who wants to go? So they have to be paid well too. And then we arrive at the big issue of food prices very, very quickly. Also jobs in science. I suppose that most of you young people here are somewhere in studying agriculture or anything close to agriculture and food, which is good. Would there be a job for everybody? I hope so. But, you know, if we go the way the drones go, you need only one guy sitting somewhere in an office in New York and runs 20 combines in Iowa, right? I mean, why not? I was told that this could be done today if they wanted to. Or why not? Maybe sit at the beach in Florida is better. So, you know, it's not, we can do a lot of things. But do we have to do them? I think is really something we need to question. We have all the gender issues, and then eventually also peace and security. But gender issues is a big topic. When I joined the international research organizations, I was already a discussion, and that's now, what, almost 30 years ago, 35 years ago. And I was flabbergasted at the last big meeting of the International Ag Research in Uruguay, that the first big presentation and panel was still on gender issues. So I was wondering myself, so how long are we going to talk about it versus doing something about it? It's been going on and on and on. So I think we need to see, okay, how do we start acting rather than just talking? So why change the course of agriculture now? Because the agriculture we are having produces today enough food for twice the population on Earth. Twice. Because we produce 4,600 kilocalories per person per day in the average, global. And a normal person uses about 2,300. Okay, people digging somewhere need a bit more, people sitting in office a bit less. But sure, a number go into animal feed already. So again, I'm not saying that this is totally useless, because I think we need animals out there, but maybe we don't have to grow grain for them. Maybe there's enough grasslands. There's plenty of grasslands out there, which need to be maintained. We have to maintain those grasslands because they have an important ecological function. Anyway, all the way down, we lose a lot, we waste a lot, and in the end, today, consumed about 2,000. So when you think about it, we basically even waste almost more than half of what we produce. So instead of producing more, maybe you could see, okay, how can we consume differently? And on the right-hand side there, you can see, you know, what the waste. And you know this because finally we talk about food waste, not only post or post-harvest losses, you know, sort of before and just after the farm gate, but what actually people throw away. And everything which is so blue and purple is what actually is wasted. And a lot after retail. It's good to go buy a jumbo pack of meat, a jumbo pack of apple, a jumbo pack of whatever. When actually you need 2 apples, you buy 10, and then what happened to the 8? You know, so this whole issue of forcing people into buying, the way the stores are arranged and all this. So I think The consumers in the end need to decide what they want to do. And my conclusion is that food is simply too cheap. If you are not that cheap, you throw it away. Simple. Now, sure, for some people it's already too expensive too. And I think that if we were to save a lot of that food, because what has been thrown away has been paid. What has been, you go to the supermarkets, the amount of stuff they throw away, amazing. Because the date has expired when it's good for another 2 weeks. That you already pay with the stuff you take out of the store, right? I don't know if people really realize what's going on. But it's about time that we wake up and say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Choices. It's interesting that 100 years ago, from these different groups of crops, you can go with the beets, the cabbage, the sweet corn, we had sort of, big, wide bands. And today you could look down there. Beets, we had 288. Now there are 17. Sweet corn, there are 12 left from 307. So the choices are getting smaller. In our report, we say that the key to actually sustainable agriculture is to diversify your crops and also your animals. But that's not what's happening. It's actually less and less. The maisification or cornization, I don't know what the word would be, of America or the world. This is what's happening. You can go almost everywhere. More and more corn is being planted. Worst crop, I think, in many places we can think of, if anything. Certainly as a human food. And so that's where we're going. So that's not, I think, something which we want. And then look at the footprint of all this. The way we eat, actually, we make the situation worse for climate change. And the worse the climate change goes, the more difficult it gets to grow crops. So here we are actually putting ourselves in a negative feedback loop, which is accelerating. So we're doing something about it. So again, if you, on the top, you have the cheese, the meat, you can see how big the footprint is versus vegetables or fruit. Milk products are sort of in that band here. So I think we have to be really much more conscientious of what we eat. So this is the carbon footprint. You can look at the water footprint. It follows basically the same pattern. So I think we have too much carbon in the air. We have not enough water in the ground. So are we going to eat on top or on the bottom? If you want to eat in 50 years from now. We're not talking about next 5 years or 10 years. But as we continue to do the wrong thing, the processes out there do accelerate. So this is the old food pyramid, you all know. We still sort of have at the bottom a lot of the dairy products still also. No, the breads and what's on there? Rice, pasta. But still, vegetables are in sort of the second band, and then we have meat and the dairy here in that level. Now, new, basically, what we think is better is to put this in much higher up in the pyramid, means less. And the vegetables should be all the way down at the bottom, not even somewhere in the middle. And move your bread up, for example. So this is basically sort of the new way of looking at things, and the equivalent on the right-hand side is the footprint. So if we eat like this, that's sort of our footprint. So you can see that the more we eat down, the lower our footprint would be. And I think there's no way that we're going to change the way we produce our food unless we change the way we consume. There's a direct connection there, but I don't know how many people actually make it when they are in the supermarket and buy. Do they think, what's the footprint of this thing, And I think we should mark. That's what we should be on each product. Not the details of what chemistry, nobody can read because it's so small anyway, but some good pictures of the footprint. This has, here we are, in the middle, bottom, the top, whatever. So that would be something smart to do. So when you look at the energy issues, we have a very inefficient system, most of the places. Because of cheap energy, we went into mega farms, use of fertilizer. Oh, it was cheap, a lot of diesel. When the oil is cheap, you can do that. You can spend 10 calories to produce 1. That's about the average, as far as I understand, at least in this country. That's not sustainable by any means. And you've seen when the oil price go up and then fertilizer price go up and then farmer complain, we need more subsidies. That's the reaction. But instead of thinking different, how could I actually do agriculture with less energy input? A system which actually is fed by the sun and rain and could produce basically more calories than it uses. And this, in organic systems, varies between 3 to 30 calories out for one in. But some people probably know that in more details, depending where you are. But at least you can be positive and not negative. And because we are such inefficient in the system, we contribute to climate change, I think, and that doesn't have to be. So I think we have to be much more careful. So the choice is this. This is in Brazil. This is not in America. Or this. No, that's not the solution either. You see, the problem is that we have issues in agriculture no matter where you are in the world. And if we want to change those systems here, which are very bad also in terms of greenhouse gas production, with the picture from before, we're not gaining anything. Nil. Probably negative also. So I think we need to figure something else. So which way ahead then? So we're going to have to think this a little bit. More of the same, something new. I think what we need to work with the needs. So what is needed? And so evidence. Where is the evidence? And you've seen, on the bottom line there, how much more evidence do we need? We have, from the alternative agriculture people, organic, biodynamic, even conservation, the ones who do it sort of the better way, we can show actually that it is feasible. The data are there. But these data are never actually pushed forward by the policymakers. Because they are being controlled by somebody else, as you know. And also, we don't want just technology-driven. It's not because we can do GMOs that we have to use GMOs, do we? I mean, certainly not before we know more about these things. Or because we know how to make nitrogen fertilizer, that we have to use it. I mean, we know how to make atomic bombs. Do we have to go use them? Somehow, people have to be more reasonable in all this. Because if you take the green evolution model, which is the model which has been pushed today by groups like the New Alliance, which is a Washington-promoted program with the G8, who sits there? The big companies, Gates Foundation, Rockefeller and Co., a few heads of state which were bought by the companies, and they decide what's good for the world, or for the people in their countries, in Malawi, in Ethiopia. Just go and look. So you see, it's all manipulated and goes still according to the old principle of more input. So, all right, bring more water, more nitrogen, and more pesticides, and you will have an increase in production. That's the green evolution paradigm. Now, how long can you do that when all these cost more and more money, and some of them actually are petering out? Phosphate, we know, maybe 100 years, maybe 200 years. But I think we have a responsibility here to maintain our soils, not only for 100, 200, but forever. Yes. And it's interesting to see that if you go destroy in a national park some trees, you'll probably be arrested. On your farm, you can destroy the soil, and it's because it's yours, you're free. What kind of system is that? Because the soil, you may own that hectare or acre of land, doesn't mean you can just go and destroy it, right? But that's exactly what's happening. There's no rule, sort of on that you are actually holding something for future generations. So that's not the model, or should not be, but that's what's been promoted by a number of large organizations, funding agencies, as the model to continue. And if you look at the greenhouse gas emission of the food system as a whole, I mean, the industrial food system, from production to consumption, is actually between 47 and 55%. More than half. People think it's the 1/3 is agriculture and then 1/3 transportation and all this. Actually, the food system is enormous in terms of greenhouse gas production. Again, a very good reason to change this, because we can contribute a lot basically to change this. Because if we don't do anything, And I'm not sure, it's maybe too late already, I don't know, but that's IPCC data. You can see what the America looks like in 2080. Minus 50%. This is water and temperature stress. Okay, so maybe we just sit and look and see what happens. Maybe they're wrong. That's what people think. Oh, don't worry. They're probably wrong. But, I think we need to think, all right, just in case this would happen, what do we have to offer? Do we have a system who has resilience built in so that we can overcome part of those problems if they were to happen? And even the people there, farmers in the green zones, will have another problem because they're going to have too much water. So again, in both instances, if the soils are not high-quality soils with a lot of organic matter who can absorb water and release it on time, we will have major, major problems. But again, are we working in that direction? And so we have this natural resource problem because the soil, I've just mentioned it, the water, some places will have too much, some other places have too little. And certainly in many countries where they're pumping water from the underground in the aquifer, which is non-renewable. Again, you can do that for a while, and then you have to go deeper, and then the pump needs more horsepower, and then you need more power, and eventually you reach the bottom. So then what? In the meantime, we will have fed, not nourished, fed a lot of more people. So we'll be not 10, but maybe 15 billion people, and all of a sudden it's finished. So that's, to me, sounds like the lemming behavior, if anything, right? And then we have a problem with biodiversity because when we're going to need more rather than less, we're actually emptying our bags of the biodiversity, which will give us the resilience across the system, and which will allow us to grow different crops with different characteristics, which will nourish the soil and regenerate the soil. But again, all the data show that we're going in the wrong direction. And then the ecosystem services, there's a lot in the press about bees. Bees is one of those ecosystem services which we take for granted until it's no longer there. I said, what's going on here? Why no more apple on my tree? In China, things are so bad, they go hand pollinate apple trees with little brushes. Okay, imagine yourself go do that. People in California, and how many 100,000 of acres of almond trees? Who's going to do it? The Mexican who can climb over the wall? It's, ridiculous, right? The whole thing. Yeah. So, the one thing we really have to remember here is that there are planetary boundaries. And that's the elephant in the room, right? And if we don't pay attention, well, we already have the biodiversity, which we're way over the boundary, which is the green area. The whole issue of nitrogen, because we have overdone it so much that we are way over it also. And I don't think we are reversing it so far. Climate change is still pushing in the wrong direction. And others are still pushing, but they're pushing in the wrong direction. Because the brick hasn't hit the head yet, wrong enough. Well, with a few problems and Katrina and a few storms here and there, but I think we as human, I don't know, it looks like we need to be really hit hard before we can undertake something. So this report, which actually I titled Agriculture at a Crossroads, so in summary, the system which actually a lot of people want to promote actually feeds only 6 out of 7 billion people. Never mind nourishing. And when you look at the 1.5 billion obese people out there and about half as many who are hungry, not a good picture. And then diabetes type 2. They tested people in Africa recently. It's amazing how many already. Because children. And that's the next generation will have bills coming in which are enormous. I mean, if we cannot pay healthcare today, just wait another generation down the road. And a lot of this has to do with the food and the food system. Not only the quantity of food, but it has to do with the quality, the residues, the diversity. So there's a lot of issues there I think we need to tackle. And it's not that we don't know them, okay? I'm sure we know them. So again, we have this enormous socioeconomic problem. And again, a system which uses more calories than it produces gives us this energy problem. the climate change problem, the natural resource problem, and in the end there at the bottom are the social problems. So you can see that we're always talking about all these different issues. And the trick is, are we connecting them, yes or not? But I don't think so. I think we are animals who think very linear. At least we are taught in school to the linear thinking rather than more system thinking. So the conclusion really of this report is we need a fundamental shift in agriculture, knowledge, science and technology. That's AKST. And what's connected to it? So the food system policies. I mean, as long as the policy is giving subsidies to farmers who do the wrong thing, rather than helping the ones who do the right thing so that they could sell their food cheaper rather than more expensive, something is wrong, right? I mean, that's bad policies. Institutions. Where are all the research organizations dealing with sustainable agriculture? Well, there's one here. How many are there throughout the US, throughout the world? Most of the money in research still goes or comes from the industry and goes for promoting their style of agriculture. Capacity development, so we need more training of farmers. So the research is one thing, but also where is the training for farmers? And that should go together. And then we need new investments throughout the sustainable agriculture and food system. So we need this paradigm change moving toward this sustainable production systems, with the organic, agroecological, even conservation agriculture. I mean, there are movement in the right direction there. So I think this has all to be supported with action. And in the end, it has to be supported with some money. Because today we spend almost $400 billion in subsidies between the developed countries. $400 billion is enormous. And it goes basically to support surpluses, which then produce price drops, which create problems to the farmers in the end. The export of subsidized products to the developing countries, which then ruins the livelihood of the farmers there. So you can see. And then the consumption system. So it has to go all together. We also need an agriculture which is multifunctional, and I'll explain that how it looks like, and which addresses the resilience, because what we need is more resilience. And I don't think that anything in the Green Revolution was adding resilience to the system. None. Nothing. Actually, it exposed farmers to droughts, to pest insects in particular, and diseases. Because they're growing more of the same genotype in larger and larger quantities. But that's just a freeway to disaster. But it happened, but people don't learn from these things, it seems to. And I think the biggest point here is I think we have to go back to the smallholder and the family farms. The family farms can, again, they can have any size you want. Depends where you are. From a few acres to a few thousand acres. Depends what you do. But I think the principle is that we have a family farm, so that there's a responsibility there from generation to generation. That's the difference to industrial, where industrial farmer, what does that mean? You have to give a profit quickly because they're investors. I mean, the farming we do today, where at the onset of the season, people have to go to the bank and try to get money for seeds, fertilizer. I mean, what kind of business is that? I grew up on a farm, and as far as I know, my father never borrowed a penny from anywhere. He saved the money from the crop the year before to go buy his potato seeds, his wheat seeds, even his tobacco. I grew up on a tobacco farm in Switzerland. The seedlings, we made them ourselves. Never went to the bank for anything. So, then all of a sudden realize that farmers have to go borrow money. So then they have to insure themselves, make sure they can pay back. If they don't pay back, they lose the farm. So you can see what kind of a system has been actually developed to make farming basically almost a sure disaster. If anything happens, and farming is the most risky business in the world because rain doesn't come. There we are, right? We've seen this last year. So I think we need to again change that system and make sure that we have responsible people on the land, because they would be take care of the land. Again, but they have to be mean to do so. We have a problem with the farmer status. the farmers are the bottom of the society because they don't earn any money, because usually in many places they have little education. Wrong. I would say the lawyers at the bottom and the farmers on top. Because, I mean, well, you can have a low degree, there's no food, you still don't do anything, right? When will people understand, the value of actually having something in the plate? And not just anything. Not just golden rice and that's it. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because everything is in there. No. A choice. Different food. Culturally adapted. So I think, so that's why I think it has a lot to do with the farmer status and obviously the land ownership issues, empowerment of the farmers and the women farmer in particular, because now more and more who runs the farms in many places in the world are the women. And that's it, quality jobs. If not, nobody will go. If you have to, if farming is a back-breaking operation from morning to evening, you won't get any young people in there. So I think we have to really, that's why it needs a transformation. What people try to do now, say, oh, don't worry, we'll do a little bit something here, a little bit something there, and it will be okay. No. We've been doing this for the last 50, 60 years. And exactly that's what doesn't work. Because if we don't take this more systemic approach to understand everything is connected, if we continue to treat the symptoms, because everything we do out there almost is treating a symptom, what is the cause of the problem, really? What is the cause? Maybe something far away. But if you don't study the system, you can be in your field there trying to arrange something. In the meantime, it's some politics, some policy somewhere on trade, which makes it impossible to do whatever we want to do. And we have all these tools, we can do all this. I think the point is that we should use it. And so we need a system which really deals with the hunger, the poverty, the health, natural resources, conservation, and climate change. So we need something which is encompassing, not just a little bit here, there. Oh, don't worry, a little bit of precision farming and we are done. Right? I mean, that's what sort of we hear. And then we'll like the right seed, which will be drought tolerant and can live submerged for, a few months. And we're okay, don't worry. And this is sort of, again, the simplification of a very complex system, which is the food system. And that's why it's wanted. So what are we going to do? We're going to invest, again, money from the public sector back into agriculture, research, extension in the food system. It is insane that people, the citizens, have left this sort of slip over the years that governments transfer the responsibility for funding agri-research to the private sector. I mean, this is the abdication of one of the role of government. Because food is a human right. Since when are you putting the human right in the hand of a corporation? No, frankly. So, again, and it has to go to the smallholders and more money to rural areas, women, and then comes this issue of multifunctionality. So what is it, actually? It is basically the three main dimensions of development. So you have the environment, society, and the economic sectors. And somehow they're sort of fit together. We have to take them apart somehow because to show the details. But at the confine of these, that's where somehow we produce our food and do other things. But look at agriculture now. And I think that's important to know is that it is done at the confine of these three dimensions. It's not in only the economy or only one or the others. So again, when we do our thinking, we need to do this. And actually, if we do this, if we really pull them together, we will have a world which is equitable. If the society and economy go together well, economy and environment, then it becomes viable again. And society and the environment, it's livable. So if you pull all this together, I think we can have a better world. But it doesn't go without. And in the middle there, we have a sustainable food production. So this paradigm shift. So we need to invest in this transformation. So let's say the U.S. agriculture is here, European, we are sort of conventional productivist systems. And what we want to do, we want to go over there in this more multifunctional but productive agriculture. But it's sustainable. So here is unsustainable or low sustainability, and over there is like highly sustainable. So we need to move over there. So sometimes this is easy, depending where you start. Sometimes more difficult. And so sometimes you might have to invest money or work, whatever it may be, to move. And we even have to move the more indigenous systems or some of the traditional ones, which are too low in production, but they're already more sustainable. But we need more because we already, although, by 2050, will be about 9 billion people or something. So it's clear we need more food. I mean, not more than 4,600 calories, but we need a different type of calories. So I think we have to think about the system, how we move there. But I think I'd like to then show that we have to change the consumption pattern because eventually these will influence basically this whole circular thinking here and also acting. Soil's the number one element. I mean, I'm an entomologist, but maybe I wish I had maybe studied more or went into soil biology. There's made up a lot of bugs in the soil, and some beautiful ones like this dung beetles here. But I think we have ignored this for way, way too long. Never mind, a lot of people have been saying and crying, hey, look, we need to look more at soils. It's coming again slowly, but way, way too slowly. So really, we need life in the soil. And the more herbicide you throw in there, and the more fertilizer, nitrogen you put in there, the more poison you put in there. So that's not going to favor life in the soil. None. So I think so that's the first thing. This maize or corn here, this is in Africa. This is over 2 meters tall. So if I stand in there, I will be somewhere. Didn't get any nitrogen fertilizer. In soils which even 3 years before that would produce almost nothing. And where is it coming from? Because a cover crop here produces all the nitrogen which is needed and provides a permanent cover. This is a perennial plant, Desmodium. Can be cut back and fed to the animals. Even around the field there's some grass grown which will also deal with insect problems. And on the right-hand side, there's many places in Africa, they have this weed problem, this striga weed, which basically sucks the sap from the maize roots on the ground. And that's why you can see there's basically no yield at all on the other side. Having the cover crop will basically solve the weed problem, and then it solves a number of other problems. And this is schematic. I bring this because I know there's some scientists around here also. So we did this research while I was in Africa, and we showed that we grow maize in a system where there are wild grasses around the field, and you can do that at a larger scale if you wanted to. And there's a cover crop inside the field. And what they do, they deal with the pest problem. So you don't have to have a BT maize because the stem borers, first of all, are attracted by this grass here. So the legs are laid here. And when they hatch, they can't really survive on these plants, but they prefer to lay their eggs there. So, all right, that was an observation by the scientists. And the Desmodium actually pushes those stem borers who are still flying to the field away because they don't like the smell. So the one system. And then we have the weed control. But what they found lately, which is more interesting, and we can do that only recently because this equipment is there, that those maize plants actually do communicate with each other. When one gets eggs from a stem borers, it will communicate with the other plants and say, defend yourself. So they produce volatiles. And it's quite interesting that the farmers' varieties have a lot of these volatiles. If you check the hybrids, basically nothing. So by our breeding programs, what we have done, we have lost a lot of those traits which plants had developed over the eons to protect themselves from bugs. And I'm sure it's probably, if you go look more into this system, you'll find more of these characteristics which we have simply lost over time. And it makes sense to do this type of systems because if you compare basically the maize monocrop, what most farmers do these days, corn monocrop, the green bars, with basically the top ones, the yellow and the blue one, where we have the maize, desmodium, and beans, because people also want to grow some other food than just maize. They get basically the total gross revenue is highest with having these mixed systems. And it's even higher when the women do the work rather than the men. Because the women take the time to plant the bean in between two maize plants, but the men, this is too hard, so they put the maize seed and the bean seed in the same hole. And that's why there's a little difference there. I mean, it's not so small. That's why I think women should be really doing the farming. And you can do this for many other crops. You can go here. This is in sorghum, same system. You can double. I mean, basically overnight you can double the production in a system where you don't use fertilizer, no pesticide, no nothing. But it takes knowledge. This is what it takes, and so the courage to change your system to something new. The system of rice intensification, most of you probably know that now. Amazing results with local varieties. Amazing. They out-yield the best hybrids, actually. And now they did this with teff. Teff, which is the Ethiopian cereal from which they make their major bread, which is what, just escaping now. And the yields were sort of staying at what 300 kilos per 300 kilograms per hectare. I mean, very low. It's a tiny grain. They managed to go up to 800 with some breeding programs, and now they are at 3 tons using these systems. Can you imagine? Overnight almost. By actually planting those things, the right distance. When you stop plant from competing too much with each other, they actually have time to grow more yield rather than to compete with the neighbor. We need more trees in the landscape again also. Again, even here, I think, if you can drive huge distances without any change in landscape, that's no good. We need trees, we need hedgerows. And the one thing the report says, I think very, very strongly, is the animals have to get out of the factory, back on the farm. There's just no question. You cannot continue with the antibiotics the way we do today. I mean, the way people produce milk, dairy, it's incredible. I've seen some of these operations lately. I just cannot believe, what we do to these animals, in intensive dairies. And why are we doing this? Because we don't want to pay for healthy food in the end. By the time we are going to be dying from diseases which we cannot treat in the antibiotics anymore, well, we can think about it in our graves then, right? We're getting nearer already. TB is out, as you know. You've seen the articles a few weeks ago in the press. Okay, so it's probably no fun to have TB and die of TB, but they have no antibiotics to treat TB anymore. So what's going to happen? So why not, again, bring the animals out of the factories back onto the farms? And we also have forgotten that, biocontrol works. Where do we do biocontrol these days? And why would we do the complication of looking for beneficial insects and then to quarantine when you just can plant a GMO, right? Much easier. The fact that this wasp is working now 30 years after the first release between Senegal and Mozambique still does the work. Nobody got rich with it. Nobody. But the farmers have no problem with cassava mealybug. Finished. It's done. Permanent. It's not like a vicious circle where you have to go do something new every other year and pay a lot of money. And the GMO actually go in the same category. We have this huge yield gap, and the yield gap can be closed, and we've shown this basically by improving soil fertility in a very natural way. And if we were to produce even more than do what we can do easy in Africa, for example, doubling the production, there will be more food than people need. We can do that yesterday, so we could have done. So here it comes with this, and I call this GMO thing the costless distraction. It is. It is a scandal, actually, when you think how much money even governments have put into this. Either to do research on, which I think they should in some ways, unless they say, look, we just don't do it, but also for the whole monitoring, for the whole certification and all this approval thing. Huge amount of money. And who makes the profit? Only a few people, as you know. So when you look at biotech, the classical biotechnology, yogurt, beer, man, that's all fine, right? We know that. When it comes to modern biotech, there's a lot of good things there too. We're not saying we should not do any of it. But I think we should do the work, the research first, and then actually use these things when we know more about it. And every time a scientist from somewhere comes up with some results which could show there may be a health problem here, just sawing them off knee level and ruining their scientific career, we should actually say, oh, there may be something in there. Maybe we should actually do this a bit more carefully. Maybe we need more research there. The latest paper by Professor Seralini in France, you know what happened? Maybe some of you know it. Where he showed that if you feed GMO maize sprayed with Roundup over a 2-year period, not 90 days. 2 years is the lifetime of a rat, roughly. I mean, most of them have died before they would normally die, or before the control. And when they opened them up, they had tumors everywhere. Now, okay, Monsanto says this is bad science. Syngenta that too. Even many governments say, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Interesting that they actually had published many good papers before. So why all of a sudden that one is no good? The problem is he had to do this research with little money, very little money. And the fact is that he used the same rat variety or the clone as Monsanto does. If you go look into these things, sure, one can always do science better. But instead of criticizing that work, maybe some should have taken it over and said, okay, well, let's do that again. Nobody did. But they killed the guy, basically, from the career point of view, like they did with many others. And, we can do sustainable agriculture also on larger scale. It doesn't have to be only micro scale. So, we can do many different things, but I think they have to be done with the brain and not only with the wallet. And then we come to this discussion, which really gets me. When people like National Academy member Professor Nina Fedorov, who was also Hillary Clinton's science advisor for a while, come and say that organic can yield only 40% of conventional, and if we move in that direction, we're all going to go hungry and die. That's written. You can read it in a paper for the World Economic Forum. You have to ask yourself, so, these are people who have some standing out there, and they go tell some stories, so a lot of people believe it. So they say, no, we cannot. They're sure. Organic cannot feed the world, but it can very well nourish it, the people. And so the question we should ask, does the present system? That's the question. No, we have almost 1 billion people out there who are actually not eating well, and 1.5 billion who are obese, and all the diseases out there. So that's the result of the agriculture which should be promoted. So in the end, I think if you look through all this, how can we do it right? Then you're right at the top. The only one solution is to go agroecology, which is, sustainable agriculture in the widest sense. Again, we have to be careful because sustainable agriculture is going the way IPM is going or went. It's been taken over by the industry, rearranged the definition to make it suit their own purpose. So I think we have to be somewhat careful about this. So this whole issue about the holistic and systems approach is we need to inform policies better. Clearly, the people who make the policy have no clue what really is happening out there. Because it's all random. It's all actually, it is supporting, the policies are made to support vested interests, or special interests as they call it. And I think that also cannot go. If not, we'll end up, again, as we've seen at the very beginning. And this issue of needs and opportunities. What are the alternatives? If you have a problem with your maize and insects, well, is there only one alternative out there where to do things? No, there are many, and I agree too. And so here, this is sort of a system dynamics sketch. You don't have to go look at the detail. It just shows the arrows everywhere. Everything is connected. So maybe the problem in the middle there of plant production, so we think, oh, just throw the GMO in there, everything will be fine. Actually, the problem may come from here, may come from God knows where. Probably behind the the side of the moon we never see. And that's why we have to sit down first and think, and then start to act once we understand the system as good as we can. We never understand everything. And then start to do the manipulation which will actually change and make the thing move. It's like an 18-wheeler truck. If it doesn't move, because there's a stone somewhere under one of the wheels, you have to go look under which one. Right? You have to go search. Maybe it's on the one, just the most hidden one. All right, then you have to still go and take it out. So I think this is what we're talking about, the system approach. And you see, policymakers, all right, they're sitting there, okay, and then what do? They problem, oh, I don't want to deal with it. And what happens next? Okay. Now, the guy sitting there who pushed off is probably no longer the same when he got the brick on the head. Most likely. And I think so that's what we have to understand, we need to think more in system and what is the reaction on an action? What is the feedback? There will be a feedback somewhere. And the best actually to demonstrate this is the ecosystem services. So clearly we have a number of services which come from the system to support our production and the human consumption. But then, where are the feedbacks usually from the consumption? It looks like it goes in the air. Exactly. It goes in the air. A lot of what goes up in the air. It ends up in greenhouse gases and makes it very difficult instead of actually being fed back in the system and understood. And there's many different ways of representing our ecosystem services, but a lot of work is being done now on ecosystem services. And one, really, pollination. Pollination is sort of the poster child for an ecosystem service, which you take it for granted until suddenly you think, what's happening there? Not getting apple anymore. Something wrong, right? And then people go search. We have a problem with our bees. Then you try to find out. And then people find out it's a pesticide. And then the company comes, no, it's not true. It's not pesticides. You guys just don't know what you're doing with your bees. You have to manage them better or something. No, clearly there's a lot. We know a lot about the ecosystem services and how we should maintain it. We also have to understand another issue is that I mentioned this before, the grasslands, the amount of grasslands we have are large and they need to be maintained because of their very, very big ecosystem function. Water issues, air, recycling of the manure, for example, plant nutrients. So all this has to be taken into account. And that's why we cannot just have farms, enormous farms, like in Europe these days, or in China. So the soybeans are grown in Argentina and in Brazil. They ship them all over there. They feed their pigs. The pig meat is exported to Europe partly. The manure stays there. What do you do with all this? Actually, the organic matter should go back into the ground in Argentina or in Brazil. It will never. And that's where the phosphorus is, most of it. So it's going to be washed down at the bottom of the ocean. So I can imagine the world in 100 years where we're going to have these huge ships go with pipes going down the bottom of the ocean and sucking it up again or something. How are we going to get it when the phosphate mines are empty, finished? I think it would be easier to rearrange this now rather than later. But, it's like talking to walls. All right, women. This is important. And these are just some women from the project which we have in Africa. And you can see, once they know how to teach them something and they grow there, they're so happy. They grow their garden, and then they have on their shop, they sell their vegetables, eventually they have a restaurant. And they really, I think, get out of their problems. They have managed to buy small equipment to make life easier. So, this is a way forward, but we need to involve the right people also with the right science and the right knowledge. Again, knowledge intensive. And this is what a lot of people tell you, forget it with your organic farming is so complicated, What about giving the farmer a bag with fertilizer, seeds, and pesticides and herbicides? And if they know how to read, they will manage. For how long is the question? And at what cost? Not the cost only to the farmer, the cost to the farmer's children and to all the other children in the world. So, where are we going? We're done here. This report was actually commissioned by 6 UN agencies. It was supported by US government, by basically all the governments around the world in Johannesburg in 2002. When it came out in 2008, after 6 years of hard work, and I had the honor to co-chair this with a friend of mine, well, we had a very heated meeting in Johannesburg, and we got 58 countries to sign on there, and the UK had to go back to the parliament to sign it, and they signed it, but eventually they wouldn't do it again today, I know that. But then there was the end. Nobody really did something with it, except for civil society groups, NGOs. So a lot of other people who's a bit the marginalized people, they always push this up, say, okay, why are we not implementing those recommendations? We summarized those results in a small booklet, which was entitled Summary for Decision Makers. So we thought that when they go to the office in the morning, sitting in back of the limousine, they will read 4 pages with like point from 1 to 12. So they could have taken 1 day for each one, and then nothing happened really, or very little. One recommendation was that there should be national assessments, because what we did a global, and we did 5 sub-global assessments. But no government will actually make policies based on a regional report, right? They want to know what is happening in my country and what is needed in my country in terms of policies. You know, to do that, you have to have an assessment there on what's there. Where are we exactly with our agriculture and food system? That was one of the recommendations. So we managed to bring this forward. So Millennium Institute and my foundation, BioVision Foundation, after 1 year of work and 6 people non-stop working, to have some wording in the Rio +20 declaration to move this whole thing forward. And that's just sort of the history, where it started, number of organizations. The problem is agriculture does not have a convention like climate change, desertification, biodiversity. So, and now even ecosystem services, there's one for ecosystem services convention. Still waiting for the agriculture one. I always say this is like the hand. You have 4 conventions. Each one of them has actually talks about agriculture, but none has any mandate. So where's the thumb to hold all this together? The agricultural one. Well, I think we have something a bit in that direction now. Is that this CFS there, that stands for the Committee on World Food Security, which links the major organizations dealing with agriculture, the 3 major organizations in Rome, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Food Program, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. So, and they've sort of brought together under this hat, and they have 147 member countries under this CFS. And the neat thing is that this is the full downward. This is the full text we managed to get in the Rio +20 Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture. I mean, this is a miracle, actually, because we were, 150 NGOs had worked basically with us on this. And in the end, the red stuff is now here. So on the one, we refer to the necessity to promote, enhance, and support more sustainable agriculture. Actually, our wording was a transformation of agriculture. The fact that it says more sustainable, you can thank your people in Washington. They didn't want that because they didn't want to admit that this agriculture here needs transformation also. More sustainable, okay, maybe we can deal with that. The more important part is the 115, where they recognize this Committee on World Food Security and basically order it, to facilitate country-initiated assessment. So now we have it in a convention or in a declaration that every country should be supported by the CFS to do a national assessment, because that will be the basis of a new policies, and not basically any assessment. It says also it has to be multi-stakeholder, so everybody's around the table when we discuss the assessment, when we do the assessment, when we discuss policies. Not only the politicians with the Monsanto representative, but basically all the small businesses, local private sector, the farmers, farm organization, NGOs, development partners. And to me, that's the way I think we're going to win this battle, is that everybody has to be sitting at the table, including the ones we don't like so much, because then let them be there and outvoted. But then that's the only way I think we can do it. It's not to only shoot in the back. So we managed now to have actually a document where we can. So is it possible? By implementing 4 major ideas of the ISTAT report, no go details now, understood? Which is sort of a model, that's sort of the framework of the model used in the background. We did this for UNEP. The United Nations Environmental Program has asked the Millennium Institute to do a modeling behind the Green Economy Report published 2011. If it's on the internet, go look for it. There's a chapter on agriculture which I coordinated, and we did the system model behind it. What happens if we invest only 140 billion, that's about 1/3 of the subsidies used annually to do the wrong thing. So we take 1/3 away and we do the good thing. And that's only 0.2% of the global GDP. Nothing, right? I mean, we can do that anytime. We could have done 10 times as much. So when you do that, well, the first arrow is that's the green scenario. That's basically investing in the green agriculture, a la AISTD. The business as usual is put the same money, plus additional money, into the same agriculture we have now. So let's do more of the same. All right. The ag production in US dollar is actually higher in green than in brown. No GMOs there, just as an example. And no synthetic fertilizer either. The crops we produce also more in value. Employment is up. We want more jobs in agriculture because we need more people there. The soil quality is up by 1/3. That's interesting. Exactly where we want to go. The water use is down significantly. We said that we use less water. Harvested land, even less. There are people from nearby here who said that if we didn't have the Green Revolution, there would not be a tree standing in the world. Okay, you can read that in his biography. Okay. You know, the facts are different. Deforestation, down 50%. So if we can reduce deforestation. And why? It's because we have better soils, we do better use of water, and we can produce more. And we have even more food on our plates too. So, possible? Yes. Okay. We need new investment from the public sector. We support a smallholder. Okay, that's important. We need to promote this multifunctionality. Before, the new course is really holistic. The problems need to be defined from the needs point of view. And I think, very important, nothing will really work if we don't have democracy. And I think that democracy and good governance is the same thing. And it's not only, us, we tell them somewhere else to have good governance and democracy. I think it has to start here, or in my own country, for example. Or, no, it doesn't matter where you are. Because we need much more and strong democracy. And Albert Einstein said it long ago, that you cannot solve the problem with the same kind of thinking that created it. And so when are we start to thinking different? And we'll start to think different when we start to think in systems, understand the connections between our action and what may happen out there in the larger world. Thank you very much.
You want to just do it here?
Okay, are GMOs, useful or do anything good anywhere? The data actually from been analyzed here in the US show that there's hardly any yield increase, so it doesn't increase yield. I think what it does, it probably has reduced costs under some conditions, but in the short term only, until we have the resistance against the herbicides and the resistance against the insects. Because by stacking genes, what happens eventually is that you take energy from the plant to do other things rather than produce yield. So I'm yet to see really anything we could have done better or not done better with something else. Because it's all short term. So it did some good. Yes, we can just spray and nothing happens. The plant grows. But sort of the long-term effects, and never mind the long-term effects on people or animals who consume all this, we don't know. I think that call is still open. So I think in corn, there is data around showing that in the last 20 years, the increase in yield in GMOs has been like 3 and 4% versus traditional breeding 28%. So actually you can do more just doing your traditional breeding hybrids rather than to go the GMO way. Exactly what stands behind, I don't know. I just heard these numbers by Professor, I don't remember his name now. We were on a tour in India actually in September, and a lot of interesting data are presented there. So, and the other big problem with GMOs is the paucity of the available varieties. Start 1980, if the number of varieties were 100, today there are only about 2 or 3. I mean, you see those graphs also. So the choices for the farmers get smaller, which means that your genetic variability is also much smaller, more narrow. And that spells troubles. I mean, for anything we know, it's not good. It's been shown in China, for example, where they grow even different varieties of rice together, which happen to mature at the same time. Basically, you get rid of the disease problem by growing different varieties together, not just on one variety. So there are benefits of doing things in a very different way. And these are agronomic practices. They are not really things you have to go and buy.
Thank you, Dr. Heron. I think people should use the microphone because some people have problems hearing. Appreciate you coming and really appreciate your message. You alluded to this, but I wonder if you could expound on it. You talked about the need for democracy, and do you feel that addressing civil rights, human rights, has to come first before we can actually address food security and agroecological farming systems?
I think we need to do many things at the same time these days because I'm not sure we have the time to do one thing after the other. But I don't see any chance that we can change the work on the farm unless we have the larger population demanding it and understanding why they have to actually buy differently, consume differently. And I think at the end, the consumer has the control of this. I mean, and I know from many of the large retailers, the action from the public they fear most is a boycott. And I think we should start to boycott some of these producers out there. Say, no, we just don't want that junk food. Whatever it may be, you go on rotation, 6 months this one, 6 months the other, finish. Because I don't think they will change. They said they would change. Will they really? I don't think so. It's all surface. But it's not really, because that's the way things are. They have shareholders, they need to make money, so they're going to cut corners. And I think also because right now, I have a slide, I didn't show it, but there's 6 companies right now who basically own more than 80% of the food, the finished food products. And the concentration goes even further. You just have to go into a store and see what's happening, right? I mean, 50 times, it's just a little bit different packaging, but it's the same stuff. And so until people decide we don't want it. But you see, the problem behind it, I guess, is that do we have enough people to do the movement? Because as long as you cannot afford healthy food, you're going to have a problem. And that's the other reason why I challenge the economists every time I give a talk, is that you come up with a way to charge, to calculate the true price of a kilo of meat or carrots or whatever it is. What is the true price of this cheap food out there versus the organic or whatever it may be, the sustainably produced? Because why is that more expensive today? Because it includes the externalities. The other externalities of the mass production of the meat factories, everybody pays. Everybody pays the health costs, which are the result from this eating this food. Everybody pays the environmental costs coming out of those factories, the social costs. That's then distributed around everybody. So I said myself, I'd rather pay a bit more for my food, and then I eat less if needed to, and still manage. And I don't have to pay for the others, but then it's in my control. And so that's why maybe all of this democracy comes in. No, do we have these choices, yes or not? And who controls power? So I think we need to work in many, many different areas very strongly, because right now we have an opportunity. I think there's enough people out there who start to feel nervous about what's going on. They say, what? And young people, new generation, my own kids, they say, what the hell have you been doing in the world, you know? Is that why you leave us behind? Yeah, so maybe the pressure is there, and maybe it's the right moment to accelerate this movement.
Thank you.
So the new alliance started actually probably 2 years ago. There was with the G8. It's linked to the G8, and its initiative, as far as I know, started also U.S. government. Actually, they launched it, and so behind this is the Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation as funders. USAID is a prominent member of it, and then you have the big corporations, Monsanto, Syngenta, basically the big food, the big seed providers, the input providers. You have a number of countries represented, so that's why they call it, oh no, this is also developing countries. Actually, it is the countries like Ethiopia, Malawi, which are always the classical examples, which are actually sort of, you know, they're not really neutral, and they get the heads of states in, they didn't double check with their people, you know, if that's right to do or not, okay? These are mostly, I mean, Malawi is sort of a democracy, but Malawi went into this, become sort of the poster child of changing course in agriculture, you know, doing green revolution and succeeding. But again, they have problems now. So just to say, so it's a group of select people which basically were pulled together, USAID, the Gates Foundation, and Rockefeller. Farm bureaus, no, not that I know. I didn't want to look at the website of the New Alliance, who else is there. I remember the ones who were actually sort of the sponsors of the meeting last year. And there's a meeting this year. Actually, I was asked by the French to go and give a 5-minute talk about data, because now what they want to do, they want to accaparate basically global data. And I wonder why. We have FAO there, we're supposed to do this. Why is it now the New Alliance who needs to go gather data? And I know because the Gates Foundation has this idea that they want to give scorecards to countries. So now you are country whatever, okay, and we'll give you money, but you have to deliver. And so we're going to come and check. No, like primary school business. I mean, who is the Gates Foundation to go tell a country, you know, I'll give you money, but you have to deliver? You know, this is not. But, you know, people need so much money, they need the money, so they will do anything almost. And so is the same thing with the Grow Africa, you know, they work together. There's all kind of initiatives out there which I think are not bottom-up, multi-stakeholder democratic operations. And I think that's what the problem is. Not to say that what they do is all wrong, but I don't think it's done in a way that it will actually stick and then last. Because if you want these programs to be really solid, they have to be locally developed. The ideas have to come from the people who will carry them out. And if it's just a head of state and a few people which get paid to go say something in a meeting, that's not good.
Yeah, so whether direct or indirect, we always see, a suggestion we shift from red meat to white meat. We suggested to the lower energy conversion efficiency and the higher greenhouse gas. But doesn't that assume that this is the usual model? Could you actually see the opposite in a shifted model, or the one you discussed?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part. Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
So, maybe we go to the mic.
So, whether direct or indirect suggestions, we always see this suggestion to move meat consumption from red meat to white meat. Yeah, but because of the higher protein and the greenhouse gas trade-offs there. But doesn't that assume the business as usual model? Could that be switched with the model you presented?
Yeah, I think, with the meat consumption, if we were to eat less red meat, but that meat will be produced on grasslands and not from crops you grow in Brazil, Argentina, God knows, or even here in Colorado, and then you ship it, I don't know where, into these meat factories, I think it will be very different. Now, again, there's all kind of calculations out there. Say, oh no, factory animals produce less greenhouse gases than ones who eat grass and fart all over the place and all this. There's all kind of numbers out there, but I still believe, I think, and there have been good studies done on grass-fed. And so the meat will be more expensive. People would eat less, and that's good for just everybody. We're not saying that you should not eat any meat at all. But, if we want 9 or 10 billion people to have the same diet, I can tell you the meat pot will be very small for each one of us. And being fish, chicken, pork, whatever it may be. Because right now, it's only a few, actually, of those 7 billion really eat meat like here. But also, I think there's a trend in the U.S., which is a good one. At least in the U.S., the meat consumption is going down. In Europe, it's going up. The famous diet, the Mediterranean diet, forget it. In Germany, they have the highest growth in meat consumption. Amazing. They're still, so, it looks like there's this wave going, and everybody has to go through the same mistakes before they realize what's going on. But still, even though it's coming down, it's still probably way too much. So I think, and that's why we need to use good system models and analyze this very carefully, given, again, how many people, what the surface area available is for doing different things. So I would say that in trying to change this paradigm, we need to make it so that it fits the ecosystem and that it fits the multifunctionality, so that we are culturally sensitive, we are economically sensitive, but also environmentally sensitive. And so one size doesn't fit all either. So one model which may fit certain places in Africa may certainly not be the same as here. And there are places where pastoralists in large areas, the only thing they produce is meat. So they're going to probably eat more than people somewhere else, because that's what you can do there, maybe nothing else. So I think we'll be careful, by generalizing. It's always a problem.
Yeah. So you say change is in the hands of the consumers. So how do you think that we can make this change when many of the consumers don't even know where their food is coming from in the United States? Or they're not aware of this information that we have heard tonight?
In the age of communication, you wonder why don't they? Because, again, I think what we need to do is to basically try to reach the people where the other people reach them. So why do kids demand junk food? Because they see it on TV. Now, sure enough, we don't have the money to put a lot of TV ads for health food, right? But I think that's where the governments have a role to play. and they have to start to represent the people and not the vested interests. I mean, how long did it take to get the Coke machines out of the schools? I'm not sure exactly who was behind all this and how this happened, but I think it happened with a lot of effort. It's a small step. And so it really has to do a lot with education. And as far as I know, in most countries, the education system is in the hands of the government. And there are a lot of parents, teacher organization, so the people I know, they spend a lot of time every week in all kind of school conferences. Maybe that's one way, so influencing those parents who will influence the school system. But I think you have to work through so many different channels. And if we don't reach the children now, I think, again, there's another generation lost. So you're right, this is essential that we get there. And school is still the thing, but even there, you see how difficult it was to convince the big Coca-Cola and the Pepsis actually to agree to remove those machines. How long did it take the cigarette people? That's just as a good example. And they're not finished. They're still trying to come back somewhere, right? I mean, they're always waiting for an opportunity to say, well, in the end, it wasn't that bad, or maybe we should do it again. It's the same. Right now, there's a huge lobby trying to rehabilitate DDT. And we are running a big campaign right now with WHO, because the only place DDT is used is in health, in indoor spraying against malaria. Now, never mind that we have every other better product and way of controlling malaria. Actually, we know how to do it since long time. It's just a scandal that's not being done. That's another story. And there, at the same thing, there are some people, and even this government, the Presidential Malaria Initiative in the US is the one pushing the use of DDT, although you don't have a factory here, you don't get any profit for selling it. But behind this is this idea that Rachel Carson was all wrong, and that she was the biggest problem for agriculture and the health. And they tried to portray her as a criminal. There were articles, because it's 50th anniversary of her book. There were articles out there who actually portray her as a criminal, and that she has all these children who died on her conscience. When all along, we knew how to do it differently. All along. But because you see, if you can rehabilitate DDT, you rehabilitate the whole chemical industry. Because that was the thing, right? Here's something to talk about. It's bad. And in a country where now we're going to spray Agent Orange across from east to west border soon, because as we all know, Roundup doesn't do anything anymore. So, it would be good to, this product is banned in Europe a long time ago, 2,4-D. Just like nicotinoid, also they're banned, bee killers. But here, the lobby is much stronger, and mostly from European companies who see this as a big market. Okay, one last question.
In part of your argument, you linked GMOs to human health effects. Besides allergens, what human health effects have arose from GMOs?
Yes, yeah, because I know you mentioned the GMOs in human health, but can you just repeat, please? Because I think some people haven't understood either.
Okay.
Sorry.
In part of your argument, you linked GMOs to human health effects. Besides food allergens, what human health effects have arose from GMOs?
Oh. All right. So if you go and you Google Seralini, you'll find the author of that paper, and a lot of references of other people who've done research feeding maize, which was treated with Roundup. Now, when you do that for 90 days, you basically pass the test because you cannot see anything on those rats which is wrong. By doing it longer, you can see that they have tumors. There's tumors in different organs, in particular bladder tumors, and some rats don't die from those tumors before they would die from normal death. So and these are internal modifications, which again they need yet to prove exactly what is it. I don't think has to do more with the use of those herbicides rather than the GMO itself. But if you don't want to, the spray of Roundup is linked to the GMO, so you wouldn't use the GMO if you wouldn't spray the Roundup. And there's a paper in Argentina, was published by a professor from at the Buenos Aires University, Cardoso, I think his name, who also showed teratogenic effects of Roundup. And now what's pointing towards is not the glyphosate per se, but some of the humectants who allow the product to penetrate into the cells of the plant, because if not, it wouldn't do anything. And these products actually are labeled adjuvants or something, and they're actually not even tested. What kind of system do we have here? So you can use actually products which are known to be teratogenic, but they are not active ingredients. Sometimes you wonder, how do people do these tests? And it seems that those products may actually be the ones. But again, instead of actually criticizing the scientists, if the governments will say, why don't we put some real money into this and find out? But it's all been buried, and I'm not sure what's going on right now. So that's it. So it's not only the allergen, it is really, I think, a tumor producing agent in there somewhere. And I think probably has to do with this humectants.
Okay. I'm sure if you have other questions, you can come back. Thank you one more time.